presented primarily by those who invaded, those who eventually established and affirmed their ideals, their points of view, which reinforced over 500 plus years of colonization. And therefore, our history has been very much distorted. And it has been, the narrative is usually through the Eurocentric, through the ethnocentric, right? Through the perspective that vilifies us as a people, to the point that it also teaches us to sometimes even self-hate ourselves and hate the indigenous part of who we are and where we come from. And this is why sometimes we adopt Eurocentric pan-ethnicity labels, right? And so therefore, anything that is associated with indigeneity, many of us tend to push away from that, right? Because being Indian is not something that people tend to feel pride about. It was usually told to us as almost as if it was meant to be an insult, something that was meant to be derogatory, as if we were to be ashamed of it. But that's 500 plus years of colonization, right? And so that colonization has really taught us, right, to view ourselves as that was the past. No, the indigenous cultures of the past didn't disappear. They didn't just get abducted by aliens and fade away. No, we're here, you're alive, you're present, right? We're an example of that. Some of us have obviously fused with other ethnic groups and other cultures, but the reality is our roots are deep in this continent. We are not strangers. We are not foreigners. We're not immigrants to this continent, okay? We didn't cross the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean to get here. We have a rich history that is over 10,000 plus years old in this continent. And recent research says 25,000, okay? And so this is something that we need to really focus and take the time to research our own history, our own culture, right? And what makes this history, this culture, and this sport foreign to us, it's because it was taught that we shouldn't learn it, that we should stay away from it. But our association, our objective is to bring it forth to the next generations and to teach it, right? And so some of us are going to do academic lectures. Some of us are going to organize, and some of us are going to referee, and some of us are going to play the sport. So if you're interested in being a part of the association, believe me, you don't have to kind of get down and hit the ball, proactively as some of the players. We need people who can help us in different ways, whether it's bringing it into your classroom and teaching it to your students, whether it's teaching it to your children, teaching it to your grandchildren, or coming in, joining the association and finding ways on how you can help. I call this kind of like that potluck mentality, okay? If we were to have a potluck, ladies and gentlemen, we could bring just chips and candies and soft drinks, and it's gonna be kind of like a sugar rush, right? But we can all bring something exquisite to this meal, right? We can all contribute and make it that much better. And this is why I'm reaching out to you, that at the end of this presentation, I want you to be able to reach out to us and let us know how you can help, how you can contribute, what you can do, right, to help us reach our goal of teaching the next generations about this sport. Because this was the most popular sport in this entire continent by the time that the Spanish arrived. Yet when they realized that this sport was so popular and so played throughout, right, throughout the Western Hemisphere. Look, Mexico alone has 2,000 ball courts, just Mexico, okay? And at that time, it was the most popular sport. The city of Tenochtitlan had ball courts. The city of Chichen Itza has the largest ball court, right, in all of Mesoamerica. And it has 13 ball courts alone in that city, okay? So this sport, I want you to try to imagine that many ball courts today, right? The reality is many of us are unable to. We can imagine that many baseball courts, right? Or baseball fields, soccer fields, basketball courts. But imagine if we were to have Mesoamerican ball courts all over again, and us going to these tournaments, us sending our kids to play and practice, us, even if you may consider yourself too old to play this sport or too young or too fragile to play, again, there were ways that we can contribute to this sport, okay? So we're gonna go into some visual presentations in reference to this particular PowerPoint, or rather our presentation today. And I wanna show you some of the videos where we were showcased, right? And we had the opportunity, when we established our delegation, most importantly, we reached out to Mexico, to the association, and we asked, how can we bring this traditional sport here in California? Well, they gave us the guidelines, and the most beautiful thing that I really appreciated about this association, they said, you need to reach out to the local indigenous peoples of your community. We're from the San Fernando Valley, and that's where we established ourselves, out of the city of San Fernando. So we reached out, we knew who we needed to reach out to, and that was the San Fernandino Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, okay? So we reached out to Rudy Ortega Jr., right? His father was Rudy Ortega Sr., also known as Chief Little Bear. So we reached out to the Tatavian and asked them for permission if we could bring this ancestral sport. And one of the amazing things that we realized is that our culture, our traditions were very similar. That they too also played ball sports. They also played games that were very similar to this, which eventually led us to teach the tribe's youth group this sport. And we did multiple workshops with the youth. And this was a beautiful unity, because when we established our association, the inauguration was based off of an important celestial time of the year. And that was during the summer solstice of the year 2019. That was extremely important to us because the ball itself represents the sun. The ball itself has multiple meanings and symbols, right? And the metaphors and the mythology is all integrated, but in general, it is a symbolic symbol of the sun. So creating our association and delegation in California was important, that it came out in the summer solstice. And if you know San Fernando Valley, you're talking about 100 degrees plus to 110 degrees in the middle of the summer, okay? And it was a beautiful inauguration that we had, because we also welcome all of the local head dancers of the San Fernando Valley to also join and participate and give them acknowledgement, because this was going to be recognized not only here in California, but it was going to also be recognized in Mexico. The balls are donated by AJUPEME. And whenever somebody establishes an association, a delegation or an actual team, they make the balls, and it takes 3 months to make the ball. And they send it out, and it's documented. And this is, again, an essential process. Why? Because we are trying to write our history, document our history. Because the reality is, history is his story. And if he is constantly telling history, then a lot of the times that narrative is very gender-centric, right? Very exclusive, very oppressive, right? So therefore, her story is very much excluded because she wasn't allowed to go to school. She wasn't allowed to go, be able to read or write. So it's very important that we write our story. So everything that we do is documented, okay? We document our history because we want to leave this legacy for the next 500 and 1,000 plus years in the future, okay? So we do academic presentations, and we've had the opportunity to be recognized by not only different schools, but also elected officials, by local community tribes, right, and so on. And this is, again, part of our objective, is to write our history, or make sure that at least we're part of that narrative, okay? So we welcome you, And I want to thank you for being here and taking the time of your day to be able to join and learn a little bit about AJUPEME, Asociación Juego de Pelota Mesoamericano, the Mesoamerican Ballgame Association. Okay? So I'm going to transition into some videos here, and we had the opportunity to have access to some videos. Let's see here. Let me activate the screen. Yeah, just a moment. Okay, somehow I'm not able to transition out. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to save the videos afterwards, and then I can play those afterwards.
Do you want me to try and help?
We'll go into that just so that we can have consistency.
Okay.
I'll go into the presentation itself. Yeah, when we get into the videos, maybe if you can help me get into the videos from the PC.
Yes.
I had set up some YouTube videos there. I'll transition into the PC. I don't see them. It's black.
Oh, I think I know.
Oh, okay. You need to log in there. I hope it didn't log me out. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So I want to share a few videos. And again, this is something that is.
Can't share it here.
Let me do this then.
Because then the people in the overflow room won't be able to see it.
Okay, okay. How can I? It's because I set these up before.
Sorry about that. Just go on Google and then YouTube.
Okay. These are the videos that I sent you. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just make a little quick.
Okay, here it is.
Okay, it's going to.
And when you show it on here, just make sure you flip back to the laptop.
Okay.
103% cash back at drugstore.
Okay. So we're going to I'm going to share the video, but hopefully we get no commercials. Okay. So let's not promote anything here. All righty. So we're going to get started and try to again share the audio here. Okay. All righty. So here is our first presentation focuses on something that appeared in Telemundo. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up if you're able to see the video? Okay. Both. All righty. Okay,
I'll make sure that.
can we do this a little bit louder? All right, so I'm gonna translate a little bit about what it says in the beginning in Spanish. But I really want you to be able to realize how is it that culture is marketed, right, in Spanish. Even when you go visit an archaeological site, ladies and gentlemen, many times, again, the glorification is to kind of scare people into kind of thinking that we were these savages, but yet, hello, we were actually murdered and massacred by the millions, right? If you ever had the opportunity to read Howard Zinn's book, People's History of the United States, just read chapter 1. That's all I ask you to do. Read chapter 1. It's called, if you've never seen, if you've ever read that book, it's free online. Okay? Historyasaweapon.com. You can find the entire book there. Okay? So, chapter 1, Columbus, the Indians, and Human Progress. Read that one chapter, and you're going to be able to see how genocide, murder, rape, right, and led to all kinds of different atrocities, right, to the indigenous people, okay? But yet, as we watch this particular video, many people who pretty much talk about indigenous cultures, especially those of Mesoamerica, the ones that had established civilizations that existed for thousands of years, that have temple structures that are still standing today, right? Who had agriculture that was advanced, had aqueducts that were advanced, had advanced medicine, yet we're the ones that are being viewed as savages and barbarians, right? We invented corn, right? We have, advanced astronomy and math. We had a different understanding, view of the world, but again, I love the fact that Telemundo covered us, okay? I'm honored at the fact that we were televised internationally throughout Latin America and all over the United States with this particular video. But one of the things that what was amazing about this particular video is the opening statement. Just like any opening statement, whenever you watch a documentary about the Aztecs or the Maya, what are they gonna say in less than 5 minutes of that documentary? What are they gonna say? What are the existing stereotypes? Which is why many of us.
Human sacrifice.
What?
Human sacrifice.
So was that fasting?
No, I said sacrifice.
Oh, because that's considered also a human sacrifice, right? Right? But yet we don't see it as that, but we talk about that glorifying, right? We talk about how these quote unquote human sacrifices, bloodthirsty. And this is part of that racist, ethnocentric rhetoric that talks about who we are as a people, and how that traumatizes our kids. That traumatizes the next generation because they believe the lies. We believe the lies. You understand? To the point that no, but it says right here, right? Hernán Cortés said it in his papers. Columbus said it in his papers. Bernard Diaz de Castillo wrote it in his book, and it's even titled "The Real Truth About the Conquest of Mexico." But nobody ever realizes that that book was not published, right? It was not finished over 60 plus years after the events occurred. Right? Nobody ever fact checked anything. We don't ever get, we're supposed to be academics, and this is why, as a college instructor myself, right, I want you to challenge yourselves, right, to do research. Research your history, research your culture, research your traditions, because the people who are dictating and narrating it are usually people who are presenting very false narratives about us that are scary. So therefore, I don't want to be Indian. I don't want to be anything with native people. Ooh, your grandmother's an Indian, to the point that it's meant to be insulting, derogatory. Yet we talk about our grandparents who had, light skin and blonde hair and blue eyes or green eyes. And there's nothing wrong with those physical characteristics, but we somehow view those as ideal perceptions of beauty. And so what happens is that anything that is associated with being brown, with having indigenous origins, right? Kind of like, I don't want that. Watch a study called the doll test, where they give children the white doll and quote unquote the dark brown doll, right? And how kids, they identify what is good and what is bad, what is nice, what is ugly, and so on. We have an identity crisis going on, ladies and gentlemen. And sometimes we step away, right, from our indigenous culture and traditions. And this is why I want to talk about this, because our presentations in reference to the ball game has to do with how our history is being interpreted. Okay, so I'm going to initiate the presentation. Can you start from the very, very beginning? And then I'm just going to let it play, and then I can translate it to in English, okay?
Se dice que el origen del fútbol es el juego de pelota nacido en Mesoamérica, un juego en el que la pelota era de caucho, pesaba muchísimo, y el capitán del equipo perdedor era sacrificado a los dioses. Ese juego
Stop right there. So it pretty much says, right, that the ball game in itself, right, started in Mexico, and yet, right, the ball was made out of caucho, which is a solid piece of rubber, and it is believed and it is said that the captain of the team was sacrificed to the gods. How many seconds was that? 13 seconds. 13 seconds. In 13 seconds, they did that. Look, again, thank you very much for documenting what we are trying to do. But this, right, and I teach ethnic studies, I teach Chicano studies, and right, there's a term, this is ethnocentric, right? And to the point that, well, I can't be ethnocentric because I'm Mexican. No, yes, we can, right? So I want you to understand, I'm deconstructing this constructively, right? But I want us to be aware. She made a statement in 13 seconds and automatically made us look like savages, right? And barbarians. Not cool. Okay?
Maestro,
Yes.
I just wanted to add real quick. As I was promoting this event, that's all I would get from students sometimes.
And that's, again, that's part of what's so important about bringing these types of academic, educational, cultural presentations to the public, to the students, to the educators. Okay, now maybe you can kind of play a few minutes of it so that we can also kind of continue with the presentation itself.
Y el paso del tiempo en Latinoamérica y en Estados Unidos. Alejandro Navarro de Telemundo Los Ángeles nos explica por qué.
Una flauta anuncia la práctica de un deporte con tintes místicos. Es el juego de la pelota. Mesoamericana.
Raúl.
El idioma náhuatl. De este deporte también se han salido varios otros deportes, sea el fútbol o sea el básquetbol.
Aquí, los límites del campo de juego no los pone la geografía, sino que los pone la línea del tiempo y la creencia.
Soccer, because this is the first sport to ever use a rubber ball. Okay, it's the first sport to ever use a ball. Okay, this is the oldest sport in the world. It is the oldest team sport in the world. And both males and females played this sport. It wasn't a sport that was only made for just the elite players, but it was also used as recreation. It was also used to end disputes politically between rivals. Okay? So it was a way of kind of saying, "Orale, I challenge you," right? Just like some of us in high school, we used to play tackle football with the opposing high school team, or, and we used to hit each other hard and play hard. But at the end of the game, I was like, "Órale, that was dope! Woo! That was amazing!" And we ended and squashed whatever beef we may have had with each other. That was, for me, that was a long time ago, but still, this was an important aspect to the way that this sport was played. There were many different forms, right, of playing this game. There were elite players, professional players, and even still today, you have different teams who are at different skill levels, okay? Beginning players may be able to hit this smaller ball and might not be able to hit this heavier ball. This ball weighs 2.5 pounds. As we move up, this ball here weighs 10 pounds. Pure rubber, okay? So one of the things is that, again, as your skill level develops, you want heavier, you want bigger, okay? And so what ends up happening is that, again, there are players who might be able to hit 2 feet, while there might be other players who might hit 20 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, and probably even up to 75 feet with just their hip with a 10-pound ball, with the easiest of grace. And that ball just, you're like, ouch, for some. While others would be like, it didn't hurt. Because again, it's years of practice, years of developing your body, developing the muscles in your body to be able to get to that level, okay? So I'm gonna continue with some other videos again, and I wanna be able just to show you some of the things that we may have had.
Question.
Yes.
So every ball that's made has to be registered.
Every ball has to be registered. Yes, it does.
Amazing.
And that's part of, again, documenting the ball game. This guy is Armando Osario Ustanga. And him and his wife are also, they're the directors of AJUPEME out in Mexico. Okay?
Do the balls bounce?
Oh, we'll show you. They will bounce. They will bounce.
The balls bounce, people.
Let's see here.
We got 11 more minutes for the workshop.
11 more minutes. Okay, let me go out of the video then. Stop the sharing. Okay, let me go into the presentation itself.
I have another question.
Yes.
Sorry, I have like questions all day.
Okay.
How long do they last? Are they like generational, like clay?
They're not clay, they're pure rubber.
Well, no, I know, but clay is like generational, like.
Oh, yeah, oh, yes. I mean, they could definitely last for long periods of time. There are balls that are hundreds of years old that have been discovered. They're part of museum exhibits today, right? Some of the Spanish, what they also did is they would throw them into the rivers, right, and into the waters, and then they found them. Some of them have deteriorated, but they're still in good condition. Okay, so again, the ball game is also a very well-known documented sport. There are hieroglyphs, there are pictographs, there are codices, they're in clay figurines, they're in stone, they're in stelae, right? In all kinds of different ways. It's very heavily documented. So it's not something of the past that people just did and never was documented. Our history has always been documented. Maybe not in the context or in the content as the way Europeans may have written it, but the way that we documented and wrote our history was through images and symbols. Hence why it's known as cryptography. So the Mesoamerican ballgame has a history that is approximately 4,000 years old. The Olmeca people are also are the first civilization who have known to have started and established this game. The word Olmeca, right, also comes from the word oli or uli, right? In Spanish, the word ule, right, is rubber, okay? Sometimes they say caucho, right? That's another word for it. But the word ule derived from an indigenous word that comes from the language called Nahuatl, okay? Many of you don't realize this, but you speak Nahuatl. Whether you're like, oh, I don't, yes, you do. You understand chocolate, tomato, coyote, right? Nana, tata, right? If you say guacamole, well, you're saying avocado sauce in Nahuatl, okay? If you ever had pollo con mole, if you ever had pozole, right? You know Nahuatl, okay? So again, the word uli derives from the word uli, all right? Or ule comes from the word uli. So again, I'm going to keep on going and talking about it. There are different terms, right, that document this particular sport. In the Nahuatl language, it's known as ulamalisli or ulama, okay? Now, in Maya, they call it pok-tapok, okay? And in English, we call it hip ball, okay? Why? Because we predominantly play with the hip, okay? Now, again, these are different images that demonstrate how, again, this particular sport was documented. And it was even documented by post-colonial, right, people who were like, you know, writing and documenting all of this stuff, right? They really wanted to be able to figure out this. We have clay figurines, right? We have stelae. Now, based on the different types of sport, right, pok-tapok or ulama has different rules. There are different rules, again, for different types of sports. This particular sport, right, is one of 5 different variations, okay? There's hip ball, the tatavium and the tungba, right, and the gabrielino also played something called stick ball, okay? Each different tribe or tribal nation has a different term to refer to stick ball, but it's almost like street hockey, okay? Now, that is a derivative of this indigenous sport. Sometimes what they do is with this ball is they cover it up with certain types of rope and then they light it up on fire and they play the game with a ball on fire. But they usually play that in the desert area, and in some communities, they still play that in the streets, right? Because this sport was forbidden to play, well, many of us who continue to be indigenous found other ways to adapt and continue to play this game, right? Many of the homies call it handball, okay? What is handball made out of? What is that little ball made out of? Rubber, right? Do you use your hip? No. What do you use? Handball. You no longer play with your hip, you no longer play stickball, but you play handball, right? So we found other ways to continue and preserve our indigenous identity without even realizing it. We have resisted colonization for over 529 years. Now, again, depending on the sport, right, you can have up to 2 and players, right? There are different types of, weights on the ball, again, going from 2 to 10 pounds, right? This gentleman here, this is Tomas. Tomas is in the back. He is our national trainer, right, here in the United States, right? And he helps train all of our players here in the United States, okay?
We have 5 more minutes.
Okay. So again, I'm going to keep on just showing you some of the ball courts. The ball courts have a very common, right, style. Some of them are almost kind of look like a capital I shape, right? Right now, we are working with the city of San Fernando to build the first ball court in over, I don't know how many hundreds of years, 500 plus years. So we're trying to work with elected officials in trying to get these ball courts created all over again. Now, the farthest northern ball court is here in the United States, and it's in Arizona. So if you ever go to Arizona, right, you can go check out this particular ball court, okay? Now, again, some of the ball games also included a hoop. Now, in order to be able to hit it in a hoop that is about 20 feet into the air, I want you to be able to imagine you're hitting it with your hip 20 feet into the air, a ball that is 10 pounds. You must be able to have ball control, okay? You must be able to have the agility and the skill level to do that. Yet the superstitious stereotypes claim that we allegedly sacrifice the best in the league players. Now, if you were to do that, we wouldn't have players, right, who can learn from the next. Again, it's very illogical, right? It's kind of like, come on now, you know. Yeah, exactly. It's historical revisionism. Now, again, Chichen Itza has an amazing ball court, right? Again, and it's documented even in the mythology itself, right? Like the hero twins, you know, battling the underworld guardians, right, and so forth, right? It's everywhere. It's very heavily documented. It's part of our cosmovision, right? It's not just part of our traditions, but the way that we understood the world and the celestial movements above. Okay. Now, again, in 1968, this game was reintroduced, right, to the public because Mexico was hosting the Olympics in Mexico City. And for the very first time in hundreds of years, many people from all over the world got to see this sport played all over again. It just happened to be that on October 2nd, 1968, there was a humongous massacre of students as well, right? It's also known as the massacre of Tlatelolco, right? But again, these coins, they're still out there, right? So they're pure silver. AJUPEME is the name of our association. These are the two founders, Reina Puc and Armando Osario Uscanga, okay? And they're the ones that, again, have established teams not only in every state in Mexico, we have teams in Belize, we have teams in Europe as well, and we have teams here in the United States. Now, there are different rules, right? And we have the uniforms that are here in front of you. You'll be able to kind of see that. I think an important thing that I want to be able to address is that the uniform, the regalia that we wear, is in the shape of the woman's uterus, okay? So whenever we play this sport, we are embracing, right, that feminine energy within us, okay? So again, here are some of the images of our players, our youth. And in the beginning, we started off with soccer balls. For those of you who are going to be participating in our presentation, we have some soccer balls for you to be able to hit. And we also have the heavier balls for you to be able to hit as well. Now, in 2019, we also had the opportunity to be able to compete internationally. And we went to Belize and we placed third place representing the United States. So it was very amazing and it was very challenging. But two of our players here are competed in Belize and represented the U.S. We also participate with Mundo Maya Foundation. We're going to be at the Mundo Maya Festival on August 14th at the Levitt Pavilion in Los Angeles. And then on September the 18th, we'll also be at the East Los Angeles Mexican Independence Day Festival as well, okay? This is Carlos. Carlos is going to be establishing our new delegation based out of Seattle, Washington, later this year. So he'll be out and creating a new delegation out in Seattle. And this is our presentation. I want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be able to share a little bit of our history, our culture, because it is your history, your culture as well, okay? Now, I do want to be able to give you an opportunity to come check out some of the balls. We'll pass them around. And somebody asked earlier, do the balls bounce? It's pure rubber. So these are like one of those like little tiny balls that you get from the machine. Like, oh. You put a quarter in, right? They bounce. You just can't do cabecitas with these, okay? You can't hit it with your head. Okay? It's not recommended. Okay? So again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be able to share with you. I hope it wasn't too fast. I hope that it wasn't, too exhausting, right? But thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, please, if I can get some of the players, right, and maybe they can pass the balls around, and then maybe you can have the opportunity to see the ball, feel the ball, bounce the ball, right, really close to you. Just remember that if you do let it go, it does bounce up, so don't put your face